I've raised goats, and they're hard. I've raised pigs, and they're hard. I've raised chickens, which are great. But we're not talking about chickens today, because after 4 years of homesteading, my first animal has remained the best one on my homestead, and that's sheep. Let me tell you 7 reasons why sheep make amazing livestock. Reason number 1, sheep are very easy first-time animals. Compare them to their 2 kind of similar sized livestock, which are goats and pigs. Sheep look a lot like goats, but they're very different animals for 3 big reasons. Number 1, goats are very good escape artists. They just get out of everything. Reason number 2, goats get into things that they shouldn't get into. I once had a tractor where I kept ducks actually on this pasture. I did pastured ducks like a weirdo. The sheep didn't care about that, but the goats found a way to muscle their way in, and they would eat all the duck food, which causes bloat and super annoying. 3rd reason, goats are a little bit more playful than sheep, which you think is cute until you realize their form of play is whacking you in the hip. Now, sheep still do that, but it's a lot easier to tell when a sheep is going to come up behind you than a goat. Now, pigs, on the other hand, are very cool, very rewarding, but the babies turn big really, really quick, which is a bummer if you want to involve your family, particularly young kids, because pigs can get pretty big, and even if it's on accident, if they step on a kid or push a kid over, that creates a negative experience, and I want my kids to enjoy the homestead chores. Another thing about pigs, the time commitment is not a lot, but it is twice a day. So we would feed our pigs morning and night. Even if it's only 10 or 15 minutes a day, you're still tied to 2 chores, AM and PM. And then finally, loading pigs was the worst 4 hours of my life. I know I did a whole video on that. A lot of people posted suggestions. If I ever do pigs again, which I'm not saying I will take those suggestions, but that was the hardest thing I've ever done, hands down. You notice I haven't talked about cows yet. I haven't raised cows yet. For those of you that have raised sheep and cows, let me know how they compare to each other in the comments. Sheep are amazing on a small scale. My first trio of sheep, I had them in Utah. I'm in North Carolina now, but when I started my homestead, it was in Utah. I had 1 1/4 acre, a trio of sheep, and that herd even expanded into a few ewes and their lambs. And we were fine on that 1 1/4 acre. Yes, I did have to buy a lot of hay, especially in the wintertime. However, if you have small acreage, you can definitely make it work with sheep. So speaking about being good on a small acreage, let's talk about their carcass yield. Sheep give a very manageable amount of meat, even on small acreage. So this depends a lot on the breed. When I was raising Dorper, I was getting between 50 and 60 pounds hanging weight each sheep. These are Katahdins behind me. I don't expect to get that much from these Katahdins. So depending on your breed, looking for 35 to 60 pounds of hanging weight, which is kind of the meat yield that you can get back from a sheep. Just for reference, I have 5 Katahdins right now. I would say they probably have 30 to 60 days before we go to processing. Depending on their size and what they look like then, my family will probably keep 3 or maybe 4 of them, which means I might have 1 or 2 to sell for meat later. Which brings me to my next point. Reason number 3 is it is much easier to sell an entire sheep or entire lamb than it is to sell like a half a cow or a half of a pig, because the meat yield is so much more manageable. So if you're doing it on a small scale, it's really easy to sell whole animals, be it meat or breeding stock. So I just talked about the numbers of sheep carcass yield. For reference sake, goats are smaller than a sheep, and pigs are much bigger. So my pigs, I had 2, the combined yield that I brought home was 420 pounds of pork product between those 2 pigs. So considerably more than a sheep. We processed them in July. I'm filming this in March. We still have sausage and bacon and on that note, lamb is nice because when you are selling that meat, it fetches a much higher price than pork, and it has a higher demand than goat. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind goat, but if you give me the choice between lamb and goat, it's gonna be lamb every day of the week. Okay, the next reason is maybe my favorite, and that is that sheep consume a natural diet. Sheep only need forage and hay. They do not need bagged food. Let me say that again for the people in the back. They do not need bagged food. Okay, that is a marketing hack that they're trying to take advantage of people that don't know what they're doing. You probably don't need to buy bagged food for a sheep. So long as you supplement with minerals, they're doing fine. But if you got good pasture or if you're supplementing with hay, that's all the sheep needs. Now compare that to pigs or chickens, where you're buying bagged food, like basically everything they eat comes from the store. And yes, I know you can supplement with kitchen scraps, but I'm sorry to tell you this, kitchen scraps make up a small percentage of the actual calories that those animals need. I was sick to my stomach with how much money I was spending at the feed store on my pigs. It was insane. I'm embarrassed to tell you how much it was, so don't ask. Now, caveat there, if you are on a very small acreage, like I was in Utah on 1 acre, you will probably need more hay. I would buy it in bulk then, but to put that in perspective, now that I'm in North Carolina, we have much shorter winter windows, and I have a lot more pasture. I probably have about 4 acres of good pasture. I have bought 4 bales of hay. Compare that to Utah, where I was buying 40 to 60 bales for the entire winter. 4 bales is a pretty good deal. And I don't even feed them hay every day. If you've got enough pasture and grass and leaves for them to forage around, that's another thing. They'll eat just about anything. And basically, if they can reach them, they'll eat them. This is more true for hair sheep than wool sheep, and I'll get into the differences of those in a second. But hair sheep especially, they'll eat freaking anything they can find. Which is really nice because as much as I do love sheep, I don't have to interact with them daily. And who doesn't love an animal that doesn't need you to babysit them every day? This guy. Reason number 5 is like the coolest, most regenerative favorite reason. Sheep are ruminants, which means when they eat grass, they bring it into their first stomach chamber, regurgitate it back up, put it back down. They digest it as they chew it, and they are basically fermenting the sugars in the grass. And it continues to ferment through the multiple stages of their stomach, which eventually turns into manure. Now, why is that really fun poop lesson so important? An easy way to think of it is sheep manure is basically like a probiotic that goes onto your pasture. That probiotic heals the soil. When the soil is healthy and the soil microbiome is healthy, it helps the grass. Sheep manure is very high in 2 things. Number 1, nitrogen. Nitrogen is amazing at the top part of the grass, the green stuff. Nitrogen is what you want to get greener grass. Number 2 is potassium. The potassium is really essential for the root systems. So really, their manure is a lot more effective and efficient than dumping salt, which dries out the land and like just, I don't get it. I've never added fertilizer ever. I'm just not interested in it. When you have ruminants, you don't have to do it. The next reason is that sheep are very self-sufficient. Really all they need is food and water. The only exceptions to that are rotation. I do rotationally graze sheep unless it's winter time. Okay, if it's winter, parasites are not as big of an issue, so I just give them the whole darn pasture, and I let my other pasture rest. But aside from food and water, minerals are important. I do like Icelandic kelp. I think that is a really good micronutrient. Occasionally I'll do baking soda, but that's kind of only if I suspect issues of bloat. So certain times of the year when weird plants are coming up. Other than that, sheep take really good care of themselves, except for parasites. Parasites are a real issue. I don't want anyone watching this video and thinking that it's just sunshine and rainbows when you're raising sheep, because parasites are a real issue and they're frustrating. Your sheep's breed and your location are going to determine a lot about whether you're going to have successes and failures with parasite. I brought my Dorper sheep from Utah to North Carolina. I had tremendous losses with them due to the Barber poleworm, which is the worst. Barber poleworm, if you're watching this video, just know that I hate you. But now I have Katahdin sheep, and I just bought them from someone who was maybe like 100 miles away from me, and they're great. I haven't had to deworm them once. They're all rams, so I'm just raising them out for meat, but it's a real treat when you don't have to deworm your sheep. If I could just add one more thing about sheep being easy, they're great mothers and great lambers. These are all rams. However, I have bred and raised ewes and lambs before. And lambing season is such a joy. It's so fun to watch the circle of life continue and watch the ewes care for the lambs. I have rarely had complications with that, and each time has been either with a new ewe or an animal that just I shouldn't have bought in the first place because she just wasn't a good ewe and I was too blind to see it. But for a healthy sheep, I haven't had any situations that have caused me to step in. Sheep are great. Even though lambing is generally easy and they're good mothers, I don't recommend starting with a trio of ewes like I did, okay? I recommend buying a handful of young rams and finish them out. It is a lot easier to start with animals that you're not going to breed and that you have basically a 1-year time commitment to. When you buy ewes, unless you really want to like part ways with them, it's kind of a multi-year commitment. Avoid my mistake and start with a small flock of rams. Finish them out, turn them into meat, and then see if you want to step up to breeding sheep. So we all know that salmon is good for you, even if you don't love salmon. Lamb, the meat, is also very delicious, and it's super nutritious. So lamb has an incredibly high amount of omega-3 fatty acids, which when you compare that to a ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids, you want more omega-3s than you do omega-6s. Grass-fed lamb has basically the highest ratio that you can find from a 4-legged animal. A lot of people call it like the 4-legged salmon or the walking salmon, because salmon also has a high omega-3 fatty acid ratio. Omega-3 fatty acids are incredible because they eliminate and fight free radicals. Free radicals are elements within your body that contribute to aging and cancer. And for those of you watching saying, I've had lamb before and it tastes greasy or gamey, let me tell you, try hair sheep, okay? Most of the stuff you get from a supermarket is going to be wool sheep, which I don't mind wool sheep. I think it tastes good. It can be acquired taste. Hair sheep, however, tastes a lot closer to beef, but just with more flavor. The best way to get your hands on some hair sheep, grass-fed lamb, go to your farmer's market and ask someone who's selling lamb, you raise hair sheep or wool sheep. They will know. If they don't know, I don't know what the heck they're doing. They'll know if they're raising hair sheep or wool sheep. If it's hair sheep, buy a cut or buy even just ground lamb and give it a try. It is delicious. It's not gamey. The reason it's not gamey and not greasy is because that greasy, gamey flavor starts in the lanolin that gets excreted out through the wool. Hair sheep have such poor quality hairy wool, and they shed it, that they produce just a lot less lanolin. So that greasy, that gamey taste, you won't get it with hair sheep. It's just the flavor of lamb without the grease or gaminess of it. If you are interested in raising hair sheep, check out this video. This is all about raising Katahdin sheep. Katahdins are probably the most easy to find hair sheep, at least in the US. They're amazing, resilient, very versatile sheep. This is Oreo, and he's the alpha. You can tell he's lost some horn action from all the fighting he does.